Hi, welcome to the Warhammies with me, Seb, and in this episode we're going to be painting an Incinerator on the arm of the Terminator. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. In terms of paints, what we're going to need the similar reds to we used on the previous stages, so Mephiston Red, Evil Sun Scarlet, and Wild Ride Red. We're also going to need Reichland Flesh Shade. Onto the metallic paints, we're going to need some Lead Belcher, Runelord Brass, Stormhost Silver. We're also going to require some Null Shade. Last bits, just to touch up on the golds on the weapon, such as the Lessering, we're going to need some Retributor armor, and then just for some pipe work on the model, we're going to need some Abaddon Black. In terms of brushes we're going to be using in this tutorial, we have a medium layer brush, small layer brush, and a medium shade brush. For the first stage of painting, what we're going to need is to load up some Mephiston Red in our brush, and we're just going to be covering all of the kind of casing of the weapon. So, take your medium layer brush, just start applying it all over the base here. It's alright if we catch any other details while we're doing this. The main one is just try and avoid catching the lettering. Again, we might require a few layers just because we're painting onto some black, and try and keep your brush strokes the same way. But what we want to do is try and get all the way down to where the canisters go in. If at any point you think the medium layer brush is too large, just switch to the small layer brush. I might have to just to catch some of those inside details. It's alright if we touch areas that we think potentially might need Lead Belcher later on, because again we're going to be going back over. For Grey Knight Special Weapons, we're also going to have this inside of the arm to paint. Now we'll be doing that later, but there are certain little bits of the casing what we're going to want to do, try and catch now. So we won't be going back over them with a brighter red. And the shade paints will really help sort of define them later on. Just continue covering all the casing bits that you want in red, and I'll see you for the next stage. And there we go, just the base layer applied to the reds on the model. Now we can afford to be relatively messy at this stage because we're going to be painting over everything else. However, just make sure that Mephiston Red is dry, and then we'll move on to a shade of Reichland Flesh Shade just so those recesses are nice and dark. Once it's dry, I'll see you for the next stage. So now that our base layer of Mephiston Red is dry, we're just going to move on to applying a base of Reichland Flesh Shade all over the red bits that we've just painted. And the reason for this is all we want to do is just make those recesses nice and dark. I'm just going to have to catch that bit. Basically just pulled there. We don't want that much in there. We do want a fair amount because we want to catch all of these little recesses before we go back over with a brighter red colour. Don't feel like you have to cover the entire miniature in Reichland Flesh Shade. Only do what you're comfortable with, because we don't want to ruin all of your hard work for the previous stages. If you know if you've missed any bits on the model that you'd like to have further painted red, we can still go back over in some Mephiston Red. Now, while waiting for the Reichland Flesh Shade to dry, we're going to use some time-saving techniques and start applying the areas we want covered in Lead Belcher on the model. So that will be the little fuel canister here, the pipework in between the reds and the later Runelord Brass that we're going to be applying, and just the rear of the Incinerator here. I take your medium layer brush for this. When we start doing the other bits on the flamer, we'll then look to use the small one. But for now, just want to coat this entire tank in Lead Belcher. Slightly too much water on my brush. Just make sure you coat the entire tank. What we don't want to do is clog up the details on the Incinerator, like the Inquisition symbol. So just take your time. We're also going to try and catch just in between here. So we also want to get the top of that container done as well. Obviously, if you caught any bits earlier with the bit of Mephiston Red, that's okay. Just might need a few little layers to go over it. But just keep on applying it until the entire tank is covered. and all the other bits are too. Now that we've applied a coat of lead belcher to the inner arm, I'd recommend switching to the small layer brush, just so we can do the details at the back and on the pipework here. And the reason for that is we don't want to start disrupting the red that we just painted. Take your small layer brush, and I find it easier sometimes also, similar to previous stages, just mark out where you're going to want to paint. Now we caught an edge here that we didn't mean to earlier, that we wanted in lead belcher. So just go back over and apply the lead belcher to it. It will come out relatively shiny while we're applying it. However, once we get that shade of Nuln Oil on, it will really start to look good. So there we go. The silver parts of the incinerator have been coated in lead belcher. This pipe I'm going to paint in Laroon Lord Brass, so I've left it blank. Just remember to catch the main pipe leading in to the end here. Remember to cover the barrels and the rear. We're going to be going over this with a shade of Nuln Oil before we go back to the reds. So now that lead belcher is dry, we're just going to be applying a shade of Nuln Oil to all the areas that we've just covered. We'll start off down here, and all we're going to want to do is just make sure we get that detail back. Just don't allow it to pull too much, because all we want to do is just darken the areas. But we just want to kind of dampen down that silver look and a bit more kind of gunmetal grey. Just be careful not to go over onto the reds that we've just painted. We don't want to have to paint over them again. So just keep on applying the shade paint until you're happy with the effect. Obviously give it enough time to dry and it will slowly darken over time. So once again, using some time-saving methods, while we're waiting for the Nuln Oil to dry, we can just go back and touch up some of the reds with a brighter layer of Evil Sunz Scarlet. And the reason for this is certain areas of the flamer, like at the top here, maybe kind of the flat face, will catch the light a little bit better. So all we're going to want to do, go back over. We don't want to catch any areas that are kind of in the recesses. So just kind of the flatter facing areas. Now the reason we want to apply this, and I appreciate it's going a little bit orange on camera, it will darken up to more of a red, is just to apply a difference in shade and the heraldry. Because if we keep it all the same colour, there's going to be no additional definition over the model. An example of what we want to do there is just catch the top and leave the recess by itself. One coat of this should be enough. We don't want to completely change the colour of the incinerator, but we do want to catch the light in areas. So bits on the barrel, down by the silver, just catch the edges, just to help apply a little bit more definition. As you can see, we've caught a little bit of the silver there. That's all right. We just go back over, but just take your time and be delicate and try not to make any mistakes. And there we go. We don't need to apply very much at all. It's just to allow a little bit of shade difference between that and the rest of the armour. So now that we've let the Evil Sunz Scarlet dry, all we're going to want to do is just apply a little edge highlight of Wild Rider Red. And you just want to catch all the little corners of the incinerator. Just once again helps add a little bit further definition on the model. Now these highlights you can make as subtle or as hard as you want. I prefer them to be relatively subtle. But just go all around the casing until you're happy. I sometimes like to do them in the little holes here. You will need a very sharp point on your brush to do this, as you don't want to be swamping and swarming the model again. Just stick your brush in either side. So now that we've applied the edge highlight to the reds, they're fully done. What we're going to be doing is just applying some rune or brass to this barrel here and the end casing. So we don't want to clog any of those holes on the brush. All you need to do is take your medium layer brush and just do gentle strokes like this, all the way down. Now this will come out incredibly shiny at first. However, we'll be applying a shade of Reikland Flesh Shade to get it down to that bronzy red colour. But continue to apply Rune Lord Brass all over the barrel until you're happy and it's covered. Just be nice and delicate at this bit here, because we don't want to ruin any of the reds that we've just done. But we do need to get the Rune Lord Brass up to the tip. Just get a nice fine point on your brush, just go through it. So there we go. We've applied Rune Lord Brass to the areas on the model that we want. We've done the inside canister there, canister on the outside, and lastly the barrel. What we're going to do is wait for that Rune Lord Brass to dry, and then we're going to go over it with a few shades of Reikland Flesh Shade. So now that the Rune Lord Brass has dried, what we're going to be doing is applying a shade of Reikland Flesh Shade to the areas. So what we're going to do, we want quite a large amount on here, because we want it to go that kind of bronzy colour. Make sure to get it in there. So that's one of the really important recesses. Remember to get the barrel on the back. Just to apply that little bit of shading. The next stage will be apply it to the barrel. Now just make sure that none of the holes start to get bubbles in like we've got there. If they do, you might just have to take some of the moisture off your brush and then poke the bubbles. Like so. Once you've got it off, go back to applying it. Make sure to get it into the recesses. You most likely have to apply another shade after you've done the first one, just to get it to the colour that we want. We can already see that Reikland Flesh Shade is starting to take the effect we want. We're making it that little bit more bronzy. Just make sure to take it out the recesses, as we don't want it pooling in there and causing a kind of shiny effect. Once the Reikland Flesh Shade is dry, we go back over with another shade of it, just to get that bronzy detail down to the kind of shade that we want. Obviously you can paint your incinerators however you like, except I find this is closer to the kind of style that I like to help define them from other special weapons and the other reds on the model. Once you're happy with the kind of colour that they've gone, wait for it to dry and we can move on to the next stage. So another time-saving tip is while waiting for the Reikland Flesh Shade to dry, what we can do is apply Retributor Armour to the two bits of trim that we need, here on this canister and then the lettering. So just take your time with this. And the easiest way I find is almost treat it like an edge highlight. Just want to catch the top of what we're painting, nothing more. And it'll apply this really nice effect. Might need a few layers just to help the golds come out. But if that's the case, just take your time. Try not to get into where that non-oil has fallen into the recesses. Once again, similar to how we painted the letters on the other bits of the model, almost like another edge highlight, leaving that dark recess on the inside. Now, applying a really, really good, nice base to this model, when you prime it, it's really important in helping this little bit be easier. And there we go, that's the lettering done. I'm happy with the effect. Just remember to finish off the canister on the inside of the arm, and that's all we're going to need to cover in Warhammer. Another little part of the incinerator that we can do while waiting for the rune or brass to dry is just go over this pipe with a bit of a Badham black. This is mainly because if you dry brush the miniature, similar to how I kind of went over in the first part of how to paint Grey Knights, there will be a kind of silvery dry brush effect left over. Just go over the pipe until that's all gone. Shouldn't take very much at all, and I'm just using the small layer brush. Now, one of the last bits on the flamer before we edge highlight just the casing at the end is just to shade these bars over the canister in lead belcher. Not going to be applying any more shades to them. Just almost edge highlight it, just go perpendicular to the lines on the canister. All we want to be doing is catching the top, just when we see the model. It adds that nice effect there. Just continue this all the way around until the canister's edges are covered. The very last stage, finishing off this incinerator, is just going to be applying an edge highlight to the casing. Just be careful not to catch anything you don't mean to. Work your way around the model. Just be delicate and continue all the way around the miniature until you've kind of caught the edges of the casing at the end. It just helps apply a little bit more definition to the model. And there we go. We've completed the special weapon on this Terminator. Now, applying the red casing and kind of the undercoating of lead belcher is the same on every special weapon and how I like to paint them within Grey Knights. Find what method works for you, but we'll be covering in a later video how to paint the rest of them. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope it taught you something new. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. All the support goes a long way in helping me make more videos for you to enjoy. Have a good day, and remember, happy hobbying.